As I said, it's a pleasure to have met so many of you this morning already. We've enjoyed that and enjoyed hearing about your situation. And we do, as Roxanne said, feel very passionately about helping your community to the extent we can. I appreciate what Dr. Chopra said about each thing. If you can just get 5% improvement on 10 things, you've got 50% improvement. And hopefully CBD will be something that can do that for you. We have to start with the disclaimers. I can't make any recommendations. I'm not a physician. I'm not a scientist. As Roxanne said, we have a family business. And when we began to learn about CBD and what it does within this industry, we quickly changed our focus to being focused primarily on CBD and what it can do for people. And we really enjoy that. So what really needs to be done, a couple of quotes that I thought I might just show. Dr. Earl Mendel said, CBD is the next big thing in the so-called healthcare industry. He wrote a good book about using the power of CBD for healing. And he also made an interesting statement that most physicians are frightened by it because of lack of knowledge. And so that's what we're trying to really combat in all the shows that we do, the people we talk to, is just trying to help people have some knowledge, some education about what CBD is, what does it do, and how can it help you. So what we're going to talk about today are 3 specific points. First of all, what is CBD, where does it come from, and how does it work? So we'll address each of those. So first of all, what CBD is cannabidiol. You might be able to tell from the name canna that it comes from cannabis. If you weren't able to tell from that, you might tell it from our logo, but that's what it comes from. But what is cannabidiol and what does it do? The cannabis plant has at least 60 known cannabinoids within the plant, and they come in various forms. These are the major cannabinoids that are used and focused on, and that's in the order of quantity they appear in the plant. So the first one you see is CBG, and these all have an A. They all start off as an acid, and it doesn't become CBD or THC until it's heated past 250 degrees. It's interesting because they've got their own characteristics even in the acidic form. So for instance, CBD-A is a stronger antiemetic or nausea preventative than either THC or CBD. So they have their benefits both ways that are sometimes very separate benefits. But the first one you see is CBG, and while it's the most prevalent cannabinoid, it's the one that you find the least. Why? Because it's a precursor to all the other cannabinoids. So what the plant does is it produces CBDG or CBG, and then enzymes in the plant determine what cannabinoid that is going to become, whether it's going to become THC or CBD or THCV. So really what happens is the way they breed that plant, they cross-pollinate, determines what quantity of those other cannabinoids you're going to get. So nowadays I have THC second. It used to be THC would have been second, or CBD would have been second. But we know that for the last number of years, people have been breeding these plants for the highest high, not for the best benefit. And so that has really changed what you get when you get CBD. So let's look now at the 2 sources that CBD comes from, which is marijuana versus hemp. So just so that you understand, marijuana is a plant called Cannabis sativa. That's the primary one you're going to see. There's also a plant called Cannabis indica. But marijuana is the most of the marijuana that's used today, Cannabis sativa. And Cannabis sativa has been bred these days for the highest high. So many of those plants are so THC dominant that they have 1% or less CBD. So if you're going to a dispensary getting a product that has very low CBD, you're not going to get the benefit that you're looking to get. Hemp, on the other hand, is Cannabis sativa. It's no mistake, same name, same plant. Same plant. What is the difference? Remember I talked about those enzymes? the enzymes in the plant and what they cause it to form. So I call hemp heirloom cannabis. Remember, you get heirloom tomatoes. They're ugly, but they're delicious. And you go to the store and you find this perfect red tomato that tastes like mud, right? So hemp is basically what cannabis always was. And what makes it hemp, the distinguishing factor, is it is 0.03% or less THC. Now, if any part of that plant has 0.04%, it is marijuana. It is not legally considered hemp. And so what we do is we focus on CBD from hemp because we feel like it's the biggest curative effect that we can get. In fact, here's just a little chart that you can find these all over the internet. But the blue column, the second column, is CBD and the things that it does for people, is known to do. You see there are some good things that THC does, but CBD is the heavy hitter in the cannabis plant. And that's what we want to focus on. Now, an interesting thing with THC and CBD is that they actually work together. Sometimes, especially with neuropathic pain, THC can help, and maybe a higher amount of THC can help. There's a drug now called Sativex. It's a 1-to-1 mixture, and it's sold by the pharmaceuticals. But if you have a 1-to-1 mixture, you're going to find that you are going to have the psychoactive effect. CBD doesn't have any psychoactive effect. It will modulate the psychoactive effect of THC. So I guess I've shared a few people, my comparison for that is like if your child or maybe you're the kid in the family and you have a party with some friends from high school and they all come and then that kid shows up, you know that kid? And he comes in the door and he's got 2 six-pack. He says, "Hey, party!" And then he says, "Oh, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. What a lovely home you have here. Thank you for having me over." That's what happens when CBD's there and THC shows up. It modulates that heady high. So you can really regulate, because people you want pain relief, you don't want to be high. Sometimes maybe you do, I don't know. But pain relief is what we're talking about here. And so the CBD, the more CBD you have, the more it controls that. If you have less than a 3-to-1 blend, you're not likely to get any psychoactive effect. And certainly with our full spectrum CBD, which has all the endocannabinoids that are in that plant, in the hemp plant that we use, you're going to get all the benefits without that heavy high. And so that's really important to us. So back to a little more about how it works. It works in your body with what is called the endocannabinoid system. So there's that word again that cannabis is based on, and you have an endocannabinoid system. So that system is a system of receptors in your body that deal with cannabinoids. They recognize cannabinoids. Endo is the Latin word for within or inside. So that's just like your endocrine system. Endo means within, crine to excrete. And so you also excrete internally cannabinoids that actually are beneficial. One of those is anandamide. It's known as the joy molecule because it's what helps you feel positive and happy. And it's also got a big role in pain reduction. And anandamide, interestingly, well, I'm going to get back into that a little bit more in just a minute. Let me move ahead with that. But those endocannabinoids in your system work on those cannabinoid receptors, but CBD is a phytocannabinoid. So I'm going to talk a lot about your endocannabinoid system. That's your system inside, but phytocannabinoids can be of a real benefit. In fact, let me just share a quote right quick. Dr. Ethan B. Russo, who's a clinical, has just written a paper in 2016. It was his second paper, and he's been studying this for a long, long time. Really, CRPS and CBD have something in common. There's too little known about both of them. And that's been hampered by federal law, which is now changing, which is good. But other countries have been really studying for a long time. Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, excuse me, of the Hebrew University has been studying this deeply since the 1950s. And so there is some good clinical information, mostly from other countries. But Dr. Ethan Russo, I mentioned that drug, Sativex, he's one of the people who consulted on that. He's been working with cannabis for a long time. And he wrote a paper in 2016, and if any of you are interested, I'd be happy to send you a link to it. The title of that is Clinical Endocannabinoid Deficiency Reconsidered. Clinical Endocannabinoid Deficiency. Interesting idea, isn't it? So he said, the subtext, current research supports the theory in migraine, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel, and other treatment-resistant syndromes. So I was going to read you something he said in an interview about this paper and see if it sounds at all familiar to you. He says, well, we already knew that if you don't have enough endocannabinoids, you have pain where there shouldn't be pain. You would be sick, meaning nauseated. You would have a lowered seizure threshold and just a whole litany of other problems. It occurred to me that a number of very common diseases seem to fit a pattern that would be consistent with an endocannabinoid deficiency. Specifically, these are migraine, irritable bowel syndrome, and fibromyalgia. They have some things in common. They're all hyperalgesic syndromes, meaning that there seems to be pain out of proportion to what should be going on. In other words, you can look at the tissues, they look okay, but there's biochemically something that's driving the pain. Additionally, they occur in the same individuals. If someone has a chronic problem with migraine, there's a high likelihood they're going to have fibromyalgia. At some point in their life, similarly with irritable bowel syndrome. And he went on to mention a study that was done in Italy where they actually did spinal taps on people who had chronic migraine and found that neurotransmitter anandamide, that endocannabinoid anandamide, was critically low in those people with chronic migraine. And so that seemed to lend some credence to the theory. And so he approached that paper from that point of view, and I think it's a very interesting reading, and perhaps even your doctor might want to read that. So going on back to our endocannabinoid system then, you have got endocannabinoid receptors throughout your body. They're known as CB1 and CB2. The CB1 receptors are primarily in your brain and also some of your organs, peripheral organ tissues, whereas CB2 all throughout the body, skin, other organs, and throughout. THC binds directly to CB1. There's the main connection on a neurotransmitter receptor is called a allosteric site. CBD does not bind directly to CB1, but it uses what's called an orthosteric site, a site on the side of that. That's how it modulates what's happening on the main site. THC does not bind to CB2, but CBD binds to both. So CBD really is beneficial, and that's why you see in that chart so many good things. It really works on all the systems in the body. It is heavily involved in homeostasis, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I'm going to go back to Dr. Russo again. Something he again said in that same interview. Wrong paper, here we go. He said, in its own right, cannabidiol is an endocannabinoid modulator. In other words, when given chronically, so regularly, consistently over long term, it actually increases the gain of the system, which is at its core a homeostatic regulator. To explain that, homeostasis is a state of balance. Many diseases interfere with balance in a given system. And if we can bring that balance back to where it should be, there'll be improvement in the overall condition. This is one reason that cannabidiol is such a versatile medicine, because so many disorders operate on that kind of level. So if there's too much activity in the system, homeostasis requires to be brought back down. If there's too little, it's got to come up. And that's what cannabidiol can do as a promoter of the endocannabinoid tone. So actually over time, you can improve the tone of the endocannabinoids in your body using CBD. To help you understand a little more how this works, on the right side, you see a dendrite, and those little things sticking out are receptors. On the left is the axon, and that's where the neurotransmitters are sent out. Now you got, I don't know, I didn't look up the number, how many trillion of these receptors are in your body, but there's a lot. And on each receptor, there are a lot of different, or on each dendrite, there are a lot of different receptors for different neurotransmitters. But if you have too few, there's nothing there for them. And notice down in the very bottom, it says enzyme that destroys neurotransmitter. So keep that little guy in mind, because we'll talk a little bit more about him in just a minute. So the font of all modern knowledge, Wikipedia, makes the point that cannabinoid receptors located throughout the body, part of the endocannabinoid system, is involved in a variety of physiological processes, including appetite, pain, sensation, mood, and memory. So very known that this system is a lot of what controls your pain, sensation, and perception. So of all these receptors, we talked about the CB1 and CB2, and interestingly, the 2-AG endocannabinoid that your body makes binds to CB2, and it says that, that what that one does is also regulate appetite, immune system, and pain management. So that's how CB2 works. But what's interesting about this, the CB1 and CB2 are what we've mostly talked about, them targeting, but actually scientific literature has explained that there are over 60 different transmitters that CBD affects, or different sites, receptors. So CBD can work on over 60 different systems, receptor systems in your body. And some of the ones that are most important, obviously CB1 and CB2, but you'll recognize some of these. Serotonin. Serotonin deals with anxiety, anti-anxiety, addiction, appetite, sleep, pain, perception, nausea, and vomiting. The opioid receptor, which deals with why do we take opioids for pain, right? Pain regulation. So those are the target receptors of opioid drugs, and CBD acts on those receptors as well. It's interesting with CBD, though, because there's no risk of addiction. There are no known side effects. And in fact, in animal studies, it's been shown that CBD decreases drug-seeking behavior. And so there's some indication that might even be able to help resist that kind of addiction that people get from using opioids, as well as all the other negative side effects that come with regular opioid use. Mentioning to a couple of people about a good friend of mine who has been on opioids for a long time and has been addicted, and so he's carefully regulated now. He started on CBD and was able to decrease those by a lot. And so, again, part of that whole package of treatment that Dr. Chopra talked about, getting the benefits from all of these things. So we're really talking about it as something that will enhance your treatment. Another one that is affected is the dopamine receptors. That's your reward center, your reward neurotransmitters. And so the dopamine may also underlie its ability to interact with decreasing drug cravings. This is an interesting one. You have a vanilloid receptor. I always knew I did when I ate vanilla ice cream. But there actually is a substance in vanilla that decreases pain. And so it also acts on the vanilloid receptor, which can help with the pain perception as well. A couple of others that are interesting, the PPARs, those regulate genes involved in homeostasis, insulin sensitivity, and metabolism. And these are mainly the ones that affect what we're talking about with CPRS, but it also, remember that little enzyme guy I said we'd come back to? It acts as a reuptake inhibitor for your endocannabinoid system. So that little enzyme, his job, he's a macrophage. Phage means eat. So he's got a big appetite. And his job is to eat up these neurotransmitters that are out there. Well, it turns out that he also has a connection that CBD bonds to, and it slows down his activity, so that you actually over time will build up your own endocannabinoid system in addition to getting the phytocannabinoids that come from CBD. So that's really great. So it's a reuptake and breakdown inhibitor, and it also is an allosteric modulator that refers back to homeostasis and what it does for getting your body in balance that way. So there are just so many positive things that CBD has to offer, and I guess the real question is it going to help you? I don't know. It has such tremendous potential, and it's helped a lot of people. But everybody responds differently. And everybody, what really has to happen with this mode of therapy is you have to find out what works for you. It's called titration, where you find out how much you take of this to make you feel better. And if you need more, you can take more. If you need less, you can take less. The good thing is it won't hurt you. So if you get a bottle of our CBD oil back there, and we recommend a half a dropper full sublingually, but if you drink the whole bottle, it's not going to hurt you. And so that's a beautiful thing. So you can work with it just to see what you need. Because it tones down the response to THC, if you decide to use some of that as well, that will help. I know someone very close to me that is extremely sensitive to THC. They get high anxiety. But if they take their CBD 15 minutes before, and then they can microdose just a little bit of THC on a really bad day, and that pain level just turns way down, and they can continue to function and cope. So the goal is that it would help you, and we invite you all to visit us at our booth and meet us if you haven't already. The one plug I'll put in for us here as a company is that because we are really interested in helping this syndrome and supporting this community, if you come back and give us your email address, I'll send you a code for a 30% discount for the CRPS community. So don't share that around, keep it within your community. But we want to make sure that we can do as much as we can to make it affordable for you to try this and see what it can do for you. And we certainly do enjoy helping with that. So that's the gang that's back there, so come back if you haven't already. And I think I have a couple of minutes if there are any questions. Yes?
Do you foresee the cost of CBD going down anytime soon now that these big pharmaceutical companies are coming? Because that's the biggest struggle I've seen is to keep CBD in your body is the key, right? To keep yourself, to keep it in there. But the cost is insane.
It is very high cost. Pharmaceutical companies are not famous for reducing prices on anything, so I don't know that that's going to have a lot to do with it, them coming in. Ultimately, just as more and more people are allowed to grow and process hemp, as this becomes more and more known and more people start using it, obviously supply and demand, as more people come into the business, I think prices will drop. But that's why we're offering a healthy discount now. We would really like to see you folks get to benefit if you can. Yes?
Do you have any pharmacokinetic studies that to the absorption rate and how much of the CBD delivery system gets to the bloodstream?
I don't have a study on that. The reason, though, that we recommend sublingual, you might remember from Dr. Chopra that it's the next best thing to IV. Right, so it goes right to work very fast. The ways to administer it, the fastest way to get it is vape, which is not popular for a lot of people, but it goes right to work through your lungs. The second fastest is sublingual, and the third would be orally as a medication or the gummies. Those tend to take 20 or 30 minutes to really feel an effect. But the sublingual, usually within 5 minutes or so, you're going to notice if it's going to work. So again, you have to titrate, see what works for you. And you can do that based on, for instance, with us, we have sizes, bottle sizes from 500 milligrams to 1,500 milligrams. And so what my wife does is she's got 500 for most days, and some days she uses something really heavy. It just depends on the day. So you can regulate that out and not use the expensive stuff if you don't need it, basically. So, yes?
Any applies to stores?
Mm-hmm.
field. So how do you, so clearly you're finding your source. What does that look like?
We're really concerned about that. There is a lot of junk out there in this market. There's a lot of CBD that does not have what it claims in it. It really won't help you like it should. And also, a lot of it is extracted using solvents, and it's not organically grown. So we use only CO2 extraction and only organically grown. It's processed in a GNP facility, so it's totally clean. And it's very important to us to maintain the best source that we can. So all of ours is sourced from organic hemp farms in Kentucky that are licensed and approved by the government, not European hemp. So that's one of the things. I've got a little sheet, an article at our booth about the 10 things to look for when looking for hemp-based CBD. And I just printed it out and brought a few of those because it matches everything we offer. So I was happy to see that. So I think time is about up. So with that, I'll wrap it up. But please come see us. And if you have any other questions, we'd love to talk to you about it.